Hello and welcome. Sam Margrave is a left-leaning councillor and also a member of the Church of England's General Synod, their parliament. Politically, this makes him a highly normative kind of bloke. There are lots of people like that. And indeed, one would never have heard of him but for the fact that he believes in traditional ethics. Perhaps it's the fact that he spent so much time in local politics that has given him the habit of speaking his own mind in public. Some traditionalists have long wondered if the welcome to speak your mind on any subject in the Church of England only falls short just at the point where the mind is persuaded by the virtues of traditional sexual ethics. There aren't many circumstances when an Anglican layman gets to receive a letter from both the Archbishops of Canterbury and York at once. But a few days ago, on the 2nd of February, Sam Margrave received just such a letter. And if a letter were capable of quaking with fury, this one would have come in at about 0.8 on the Richter scale. The letter insisted that some of Sam's comments on his Twitter feed had caused some members of the C of E to feel intimidated, bullied and distressed. He was accused particularly of lacking nuance and further, to quote, "We write to rebuke you and ask that you publicly apologise for your language and the offence that your language has caused," end quote. I don't think I remember either an Archbishop of Canterbury or York ever publicly rebuking anyone ever before. It's not done. It's not part of the Anglican lexicon. There are no rebukes for heresy, and there's been lots of it, or public and personal immorality, and there's been lots of that. There's been no rebukes directed towards, for example, high-profile media LGBT plus priests like the one who wrote recently and very publicly how he and his gay partner had set out deliberately to deceive the church about their nuptial arrangements. He wasn't rebuked. Rebuking is just not done. The word's never used until the archbishops found themselves outraged at Mr. Margrave's lack of nuance. Now, what is nuance? It's a value much appreciated in Anglican circles. It's prized as the virtue of not quite saying what you mean. It's often taken to be the practice of talking with just enough obfuscation to give the impression you're being polite when actually, really, you intend to be rather rude. It's a very English middle-class thing. It always baffles Americans in particular. And Mr. Margrave's failure to use nuance is what has caused what looks like this double archiepiscopal apoplexy. And that's probably because Mr. Margrave wanted to say what he means, because he thinks it matters. The tide of sexual progressivism has been rising slowly, inexorably and steadily in the Church of England. But sometimes there arrives a symbolic moment where things change and are noticed, and it makes a difference. One such was an Anglican altar in Leicester, where the lady vicar arranged for the altar to be covered by a rainbow pride flag instead of an altar cloth of the right liturgical colour and biblical motif. Quite a number of people felt this was a step too far. On their behalf, Mr. Margrave raised the matter at General Synod, which is what Synod's for, but to considerable progressive fury. Worse even than that, he'd caused serious public controversy when in July last year he put forward a private members' motion called a PMM for the General Synod entitled "A Declaration of Christian Incompatibility of Pride." Mr. Margrave's commitments also involved a pledge to run a campaign against the sexualisation of children, the kind of thing you might think the Church of England would welcome. And in the two private motions he submitted, he asked bishops to do a number of things. Firstly, to raise concerns put to him by parents and professionals about images that show the sexualisation of grooming of children, and to enforce laws in churches regarding the use of flags, because there are some, and to reflect on the relationship between queer theory and paedophilia. That's a big one, as we'll see. And also to consider whether pride is compatible with the Christian faith, which of course we know it's not. And it was the questioning of the link between the LGBTQI plus progressive agenda and the sexualisation of children that appeared to be really where the deepest animus against him has been generated or detonated? They don't like that question. No doubt Mr. Margrave expected a certain amount of pushback as he asked the legislative body of his church to reflect on these charged matters, but two things he may perhaps not have expected were first of all a host of death threats, and secondly that his diocesan bishop, the Bishop of Coventry, responded to pressure by LGBT campaigners and reported him to the police for hate crime. It appears that even in Anglican theological discourse, the line between the lack of nuance and hate crime is thinner than any of us might have expected. Well, Mr. Margrave released a public statement commenting on the position he found himself in, and I think it deserves to be quoted only so that we can all make up our own minds about his unwillingness or incapacity to bring the sufficient degree of nuance to bear that the Archbishops requested him to do. He wrote, "I'm shocked, appalled and deeply hurt that the Bishop in the diocese has resorted to reporting me to the police and has essentially thrown me under the bus for standing against the sexualization of children and the secularization of the Church of England. I have been repeatedly harassed and threatened, and the impact on my well-being has been immense. And the people in the Church who should be supporting me the most, particularly in defending children, have closed ranks against me. I believe the C of E has been politically infiltrated by Stonewall and others. The promotion of queer theory, the acceptance of pride flags, and now reporting any vocal opposition to the police bears all the hallmarks of Stonewall and a repressive regime that wants to silence biblical truth at any cost." And Sam goes on, "All I've wanted to do was to protect children and give a voice to their parents by standing against the sexualization and grooming of children, which was part of the manifesto I was elected on to the Synod." "I don't hate anyone," went on Sam. "This is not about hate. It's always been about the truth and bringing positive change to the Church of England. There is no natural justice," he went on, "and no complaints process within the Church to look at these matters. I've been bullied for representing people, and especially parents, in the diocese who've raised concerns with me. Many people," he said, "who've attacked me are unable to distinguish between homosexual people and the LGBTQ pride movement. They're two separate things. There are many people with same-sex attraction who are totally opposed to what happens at pride parades. One of the stated aims of the pride movement is to celebrate a wide variety of sexual lifestyles which are diametrically opposed to Christian sexual ethics and doctrine of the Church of England." Well, that was what he wrote about his own position. Now, the timetabling this month of the debate that the Church of England has undertaken on how it intends to progress the political and cultural imperative it feels to bless gay civil marriages, whilst declining to embark on a change of its present doctrinal position, which refuses to endorse them, saying that marriage is between men and women. This has added fuel to the fire and got Sam into more trouble. The Archbishop's joint letter, in which they reach for the word rebuke, be silent and apologise formula, may well express a degree of frustration in these circumstances that they feel. It's certainly the case within the Anglican polity. They don't have any institutional power over Mr. Margrave. What they may be hoping to exercise to shut him up is moral authority in order to free themselves from his unstinting public invitations to reflect on the gap between what the Church officially teaches and what it's preparing to practice through these prayers of blessing. Their problem may be exacerbated by Mr. Margrave's unnuanced suspicion that moral authority may be exactly what they lack, and that no amount of nuance can hide the growing gap between what the Church officially believes and what it's preparing to practice. Pray for Sam Margrave. Pray for the Church of England. Pray for all those who have the courage to speak out against this progressive agenda that is attempting to stifle Christian consciences and distort our witness to the gospel in whichever church you belong to.